From a top secret network of highly secure locations across North America, this is the Summer League edition of the Spurs Insider. I am your host, as always, Mike Fingard, joined by Express News Spurs beat writers Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn, who is setting up shop. It's a secure location. This might be one of his most secure locations he's ever podcasted from.
It's so
we might
secure,
get to that later.
It's so secure that you could hide nuclear secrets in there.
I think, yes, that has been done. We might get to that by the end of the podcast. We want to keep people around for the whole thing. But let's not waste any time getting to the story of the summer. That is Victor Wembanyama, number one draft pick, 7'3.5" phenom from France, has played 2 games for the Spurs. If you listened to the last edition of the Spurs Insider podcast, you knew that was probably going to be the extent of his summer league experience. And Tom, we'll start with you. What are your impressions of those first 2 Spurs games from Victor Wembanyama?
Oh, well, the first game was a little uneven. A lot of people who, were a tad disappointed with it or just knee-jerk reaction where knee-jerk reactions were ridiculous. He had several factors contributed to him not playing as well as he would have liked to, but still he showed a lot in that first game, and then he came out and pleased everyone with his performance in the second game.
It was a matter of expectations, I think, too. Like the expectations were just through the roof, and the media as a whole was probably to blame for that, but for good reason. Like, he is the greatest to come out of the draft in a quarter century or 20 years. But that doesn't necessarily mean, I guess maybe we didn't do a good enough job of setting people up for that. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to show up without practicing and just tear through the first game of Summer League. I think what you looked for in that game was just how he looked and how he moved, and even in that game he was doing things with the basketball you've never seen a 7'3.5" man do before, and you just even when he wasn't making shots, you could see it all right there in front of you. And defense is the thing that translates whether he's rusty or not. He had 5 blocks in that first game, and I think this is a guy that if he plays enough his rookie season, you're looking at an all NBA type defender if he does nothing else as a rookie. So I think that part was exciting too from game 1. And then I guess game 2, you saw a lot more of the, you saw shots go down and you saw a lot more of the offensive arsenal.
Yeah, Summer League's just crazy. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm going to let the media off the hook for the expectations thing. The number one person who created these huge expectations for Victor Wembanyama in his first game was Victor Wembanyama, because every time he has done anything on this type of stage before, he's been sensational, like exceeded expectations. You go back to the first game he played in the United States and just down the road from Thomas and Mack in Henderson, Nevada last October, where it seemed like there was so much hype for this game, this exhibition against Scoot Henderson, that he was set up to fail, and he was unbelievable. And you just expected him to do it again. And he did. He wasn't making his shots. Like, that was the number one thing in the first game. His shot wasn't there. There were some repeated dribble drives that didn't exactly work out well. And I think that's the one part of his game that probably is going to be in for the biggest rude awakening in the NBA. And that some of those situations where he's tried to be almost a point guard in a way and create by driving into the lane, that's not going to happen. That's not going to work for him in the NBA on a consistent basis. Like, he's gonna pull that off sometimes, but that's not what I think the Spurs are going to ask him to do. And the other factor that Jeff and Tom both mentioned all the reasons why he wasn't going to be a superstar in that first game. Right away, the time off, just the the ridiculous week that he'd had in terms of media appearances and TMZ, sensationalism and all the stuff that went into that. The other thing is, like, the Spurs Summer League team doesn't have a point guard type, the experienced guy, playmaker type that he's going to have, even from like a Trey Jones on the NBA team. And I think that the Summer League team could have benefited from that in a way, of just having somebody to help set him up. But when you look at the two games as a whole, like that, you saw all the reasons why the Spurs were so excited to get him, why NBA scouts and executives have been building him up so much, why the draft experts were calling him the biggest prospect in 20 years. Like, you see all of that. Now, does that mean he's going to come in and be Rookie of the Year? I'm not sure. But I think you see all the reasons why he is the face of this franchise, and the Spurs should expect that for him.
If he plays 20 years, he will never be in a situation like he was in that first game, where he's going to have not played for a month and practiced once. Like, that will never happen again. If he ever misses a month of his NBA career, he's going to get more than one practice before they throw him out. So there was a little bit where I was impressed he came back in game 2 and had the game that he had. You know what I mean? Like, that impressed me a lot. Just some fortitude there.
Especially in the last 4 minutes when they were trying to come back, and he virtually, almost won it single-handedly. But to go back to that first game, it's 2 practices, playing with guys he doesn't know, spacing's poor. Blake Wesley, still trying to learn how to play point guard, is at the point. Guys are pounding on him, wanting, he's got a target on his back, which he'll have to get used to. And the second game, he was fantastic. Everything we thought he'd be.
I saw enough to think he can be Rookie of the Year, runner-up to Chet Holmgren.
Well, I mean, there are good rookies in this class, and there will be some situations where, like, let's say Damian Lillard does get traded, which it looks like he will. Like, Scoot Henderson is going to be the focal point of that Portland offense from the beginning, and Victor Wembanyama could have a great year and finish second to him or Chet Holmgren or Brandon Miller and Rookie of the Year vote. That doesn't make him a disappointment. The Spurs did not draft him hoping that he'd become Rookie of the Year. Like, there are bigger expectations for him than that. Which isn't to say they're going to, like Jeff has mentioned a couple of times online, the Spurs would love for him to win Rookie of the Year, and are going to do everything they can to make sure there's a possibility that happens. Like, they're not going to be load managing him from day one. This having him sit after the second game of Summer League is not a redux of Kawhi Leonard load management. This was the plan all along. And like we mentioned, I think the last podcast, Victor Wembanyama has played more basketball in the last year than every other player in the draft. He played a full French League season that went all the way to the middle of June. It was longer than the college season. The G League guys, Scoot Henderson, sat out the second half of the season. There was no reason to play him more than a couple of games that the NBA very much wanted him to play in Vegas around all the hype that was, the announcement of the in-season tournament, and just get eyeballs on Summer League for a couple of days. Like, the Spurs and Victor and the NBA all kind of wanted that exposure, but it didn't need to be more than 2 days.
Yeah, no, it was what was expected. They stuck with the plan. He's stuck around. He did some rookie orientation stuff. Then, of course, today, the big announcement about him landing an endorsement deal with Barcode. So his name is still out there. He's still the focal point. But it's been fun also watching another French player that they drafted in the second round performed quite well defensively with his playmaking. Talking, of course, about Sidi Sissoko. Of course. Who's been fun to watch out here. And, Don Barlow has played well. Champagny, of course. But it was neat to see Wemby on the bench with those guys Monday night. or Tuesday night when they faced the Wizards. Just really engaged and into the game in street clothes.
You bring up the point that this trip was not just about the 2 games he played, and we can get into all the off the court stuff that he was involved in, including the pop diva encounter that was the story of last week. But in general, it was just I think just in being around him for a few days in Vegas, it was another example of just the level of celebrity. I think it's eye-opening for not only him and what the NBA is about, but also eye-opening for the Spurs, for everyone around Wembanyama to see what this is going to be like and the attention that's always going to be there. From Britney Spears trying to come up to him in a casino on his way to dinner, and how that turned into this huge story, to just the fact that when you walk into Thomas and Mack, and Tom, you and Jeff have been covering games there for many years, and typically, to let the listeners / viewers in on how that works behind the scenes, there's just like you grab guys in the hallway after a game. Every player, every coach, you just stand there and get what you need and move on. That's how it was for everybody else. For the Spurs and Victor, they had a whole interview room set up for him. Huge room, seats, microphones, all that stuff. Like, they are making accommodations for this prospect like they've never made accommodations. And by they, I mean the NBA, not just the Spurs. Like, the NBA realized they had to do this.
And, there would have been no way to interview Victor in like the corner of the gym like they did with everybody else. Like, that would have just been impossible. They had to have a dedicated room. Same with the draft.
Correct. He had his own floor in the draft, or the day before the draft. And he's that first game, Tom, you can speak to this, but you could tell he came in, and the way I put it was that media interview, that press conference, that interaction was not testing, but it was the least delightful that Victor Wembanyama has been this whole summer, because you could tell he was disappointed, and he didn't admit it, but he wanted to put on a show for the people who showed out to that game. That was a buzz-worthy game. That was like a heavyweight fight at the MGM Grand level of anticipation that came with that game. I mean, everybody who was in Vegas wanted in, and it was sold out. And of course, they wanted in because they wanted to see this once-in-a-generation prospect put on a show. And even though he played fine, he didn't put on that show. And even though he said he was happy that the Spurs won that first game, you could tell he wanted to do a little more. And I think that's fine. And still, he answered all the questions. He was patient. He was funny. He was better after that second game because he had put on a show. And I think, like I mentioned in the newspaper on expressnews.com and the Spurs newsletter last week, this was kind of a welcome to the NBA, eye-opening experience for Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs as well. And I think just that experience will serve him well in the weeks and months and years to come.
Yeah, his disappointment. He couldn't hide the disappointment, etched on his face. But he's so candid. That's really refreshing too, to hear him say, "I didn't know what I was doing out there." That was neat to see too. There's just a level of candor from him that's refreshing, and I thought he handled it really well.
I think that was.
I will add on
I think that was literal too. Ahead, like, he had one practice. He literally didn't know what he was doing out there.
Yeah. And for people to get all worked up about it, it's just really ridiculous.
I think he had 2 practices, but still, same point. On the candor note, one thing that kind of made my eyebrows raise along those lines was the interview that he gave the morning before, which Tom and I were in the air and didn't quite make it. But he was asked about the Britney Spears thing, and he answered it in a way that was so matter of fact and so not trying to hide anything. And so just kind of laughing at the whole thing, and that got the Britney Spears fans really upset. But it was this level of candor, of just being open, that you hardly ever see from people in that situation. And part of it is he's 19. Part of it might be that he's French. Doesn't say what the big deal is. But part of it might just be his personality, and that he went play by play. He said, "I was walking, I heard someone from behind me, and they hit me on tapped me on the back, and the security guard intervened. I don't know how much force, and I had a nice dinner, and it wasn't him trying to spin it in any way. And there's still that aspect of his personality that is shining through, despite him being one of the most famous people in the world. And for sure, that's going to be hardened a little bit over time. Like it has to. Like he's eventually going to learn how to spin things and how not to tell the entire truth in response to every single question he gets asked.
Tony Parker was our best source for injury information on other players.
That's true too. That's true too.
He couldn't stop it. It's like, oh yeah, it's up for the year. Tough loss.
The Britney thing is just so ridiculous. I know he's an alien, right? But he doesn't have eyes in the back of his head. He doesn't know who she is or what she's doing.
He didn't have anything to do with any of it.
Yeah. And the security guard reacted so well, I thought. I didn't, wasn't any...
I have no opinion on this question, really, but I'm just curious. What do we think about the first member of the Spurs organization to address that was the 19-year-old rookie? Like, should someone else have said something first? I kind of don't really have an opinion. I'm just curious what you guys think.
No, that was perfect.
Perfect.
Like, just let Victor handle it. And he did. And I guess there could have been like from the Britney fans, who I've gotten to know a bit online for the past few days. They're saying, "Oh, he should have offered a little bit more remorse." I'm sure that's fair. Like, okay, he could have said something like, "I'm sorry that she got hit," or whatever. Which, I'm sorry it happened, whatever. But like, it's not. I don't think she went to the hospital. I don't think that. I don't think there was anything that rose to that level. But maybe the next time, he will say, he will, having learned from this situation, he will understand that people are not just judging him by what happened on the video, but by how he responded to it afterwards. And I would bet if this exact same incident happens next week, he would throw at least one line out there like, "Oh, sorry that happened." It's a learning experience.
I can see from his perspective, he did nothing. He did nothing right. to apologize for. But I'm sorry that happened is a good sentence to say, maybe.
Yes. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think for the not at all saying that security did anything wrong, but like maybe better anticipation next time that in that situation there could be like a pop diva chasing from behind, and you go over the top to make sure to like minimize physical contact, even though that was kind of a put your hands up swipe type of thing. I would guarantee that the many qualified, competent, experienced security people who are going to be around Victor this year have probably had that discussion. Like, let's review the tape the way that Victor Wembanyama reviews the game tape and say, did we do our, that type of thing.
All the pop divas out there learn that you just don't run up on someone from behind and try to tap them on the shoulder or whatnot. Shouting in a fake British accent. Like, maybe that's the lesson that could be learned from the pop divas out there that are going to be wanting to meet Victor Wembanyama here over the next few years.
Absolutely, but that's not something that you can't pass the buck on that if you're Victor Wembanyama or the Spurs. You can't assume that the pop divas are going to act responsibly in the future. You have to anticipate pop divas who are another.
Maybe the pop divas needed to show a force, like make an example.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Much like
they need to learn.
I will draw this parallel. You could Jeff McDonald, Tom Osborne, hope that other people who you see in press conferences, and Victor Wembanyama press conferences over the weeks and months and years to come, will all ask great questions in the future, and just hope that they learn from the not great questions and the questions that are sort of performing for the camera type thing, and hope that they learn their lessons. Or like Jeff McDonald could learn that maybe when a bad question is asked, like don't smack your head and react to it.
No, but look,
like move on.
If someone smacked the people asking the bad questions, maybe they'd learn.
We are not endorsing violence anyway. That's an unprofessional.
I have children, so
any self-induced head slap by Jeff McDonald is welcome. All right.
Hey, Britney's head slap was self-induced.
Yes.
Much like Jeff McDonald smacking his own head is also.
Nobody knows what we're talking about. That was really funny.
But like the listeners, I think enjoy the in jokes sometimes. Also, this would be a good time to mention that we are recording this on a Thursday afternoon, Central Time, still in the morning, Las Vegas time. I know from having spent a few days there with Tom and in the hotel that houses his secure location, that he probably just got back from the concierge lounge where he had a nice little breakfast, some coffee. And you want to fill the listeners in on why you are not podcasting from your hotel bedroom at this time, and where you are precisely within your secure location.
Well, I'm in my room in the restroom.
Restroom.
My wife is with me, and she's watching Wimbledon, which we've been really enjoying. In fact, watching Wimbledon, there's a little Spur tie we tied to it. We were trying to think this morning of Quincy Pondexter's name and Sloan's. Yes. So we
was from a Mike Finger column a few years ago.
Exactly. We went out for a walk this morning. We were talking about American tennis players, and I said, Beth is really knowledgeable about tennis, much more so than myself. In fact, she's more knowledgeable about any sport than I am. But anyway, I asked her, whatever happened to that player that the Spur guy, the Spur was friends with from Sacramento that Mike wrote the column on, and that brought us to Quincy Pondexter and his friendship with Sloan. So
yes. And so not to put too fine of a point on this, but exactly where in the restroom are you podcasting from? I think the listeners would like to know this. Yes. Well, where are you sitting?
Well, right now I moved from our first spot. Now I'm on the bathtub.
So he wouldn't have to admit it out loud. That's why he moved.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's just a peek behind the scenes of the Spurs Insider podcast.
Are there state secrets in there? Nuclear secrets that just got stored?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
That is the place where you store them. That is the place where you store them. Like in a bathtub, that's the best spot for them. The decision, the well-anticipated decision by Victor Wembanyama to call it a summer league after the second game means that we will not see him publicly on the basketball court for sure until the end of September. He has announced that he will not play in the FIBA World Cup with the French team. Another decision he made kind of in consultation with the Spurs. This is going to be I think this will be a good break for him, even though he's going to get back to the gym. He's very dedicated to his training regimen, all that type of stuff. But, while he's gone, what's on the agenda for the remaining Summer League Spurs, the Malachi Branham All-Stars, if you will. Tom will be there through the end of Summer League. What are you looking to see from those guys?
Hey, they want to come home with a championship. So, they have a game against Detroit Friday night, and then they'll play at least one more, I believe, if they're not in the playoff portion of this highly competitive summer league. But as I said earlier, the focus, it shifts game to game, but throughout they've been really pleased with Sidy Cissoko. He's got this linebacker build and this rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, head down, drive to the basket way about him. He's fun to watch. He had the behind the back pass to Barlow last game for an easy bucket. Really committed to playing good defense, which he has done so far. And he's been kind of emerging as the focus out here as just as Brian White said, they thought they got a steal getting him in the second round. And he's been playing quite well.
Well, talking to folks about him like the defense thing, he could play right now in the NBA, and he can stop guys. Like you watched him against Brandon Miller, you watched him against several of the Trailblazers top guys. Elite offensive players don't like it when Sidy Cissoko guards him, and at that level, that part of his game plays right now. Now, I don't think that the Spurs have made official what type of contract he's going to sign yet. I believe from the beginning the plan was a two-way deal, which I still think, especially considering how crowded the Spurs full roster is right now, I still think that's the most likely thing. And the advantage there is that which the part of his game that needs to grow is the offensive game. Like Tom mentioned, he has had a couple of moments, but that is the raw part of his game is on offense. And that is where prospects going back to Derek White, DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, name the group, that Devin Vassell, they honed that scoring ability, that offensive ability in Austin. And I think that that could work out really well for a guy like Cissoko this year. If he comes back, and I'm sure he'll get some, like a two-way deal, you get to spend half the year with the big club if you want to, but he's going to get a lot of playing time in Austin, I think, and that he can learn there how to develop that other part of his game. The other thing to talk about is, I've been really impressed with Malachi Brown. That dude is going to be
despite the 1 of 17.
Yes.
Throw that out because that the rest of his summer has been really good.
He bounced back.
Bradley be a light, kind of.
Yeah, he bounced back 29 points after that, terrible shooting performance. He was stung by criticism on Twitter. It really got
to him. To not read Twitter. That would be my.
I agree.
That would be my.
When the scouts talk about 3-level scorers at 10, he's got the 3-point shot. He can do the mid-range stuff, and he can get to the hoop. And he's not an all-star right away, but weirdly for a team that went 22-60 last year, there's going to be kind of a playing time crunch. I'm not sure. When you look at the roster, it's like, where are all these guys going to get minutes? Because you want to play what we have pegged as a starting 5, which might not be, because I don't think Victor Wembanyama really is the center on this team, nor does he want to be the center on this team. But if you go through Trey Jones at point, 3 wings, Vassell, Johnson,
it's really a starting
Sohan, and then Wembanyama, and then Zach Collins is going to play in there. So you're right, Jeff. It's a starting 6. Those guys are all going to get a bunch of minutes. Then, you need to find time for Malachi Branham. You need to find time for, I think Blake Wesley's going to play more. You're bringing Doug McDermott's back. You just got Reggie Bullock. The kid from Cleveland, Seti Osman. There's all kinds of guys that can get time, and we haven't even mentioned the Charles Bassey types, the Mamu, the who am I forgetting? Julian Champagny.
Yeah,
Champagny's been a huge star in the summer, and that dude can make shots. Pop's gonna have an interesting time working all these guys in, and some of these guys obviously are gonna get relegated to the end of the bench at some point, but they have fun little combinations, fun little options to play with. It's more than just a Wemby show, I think.
Going back to the summer guys, Barlow's still unsigned too.
I didn't even mention him.
But Barlow's unsigned. I suppose, as we talked about before, he was kind of pegged for a two-way deal, and I suppose that's still the plan. But I mean, is he going to get some? Is he going to get some offers from some other teams? I mean, is he going to look from some other teams based on his summer?
Because he's a restricted free agent, and if another team sees that, hey, the Spurs have a roster crunch and maybe it's worth a while to throw this guy an offer and make the Spurs think about it, like that might happen. They already have to waive 2 guys. They have 17 guys on full deals right now, right?
I don't see how they can sign Barlow to a full deal, really, with the crunch.
That's what I'm saying. Same thing with Sissoko. Same thing with Sissoko.
Right. Well, Brian Wright, I talked to him before Tuesday's game, and he said he kind of left the door open on Sissoko. I asked him about what their plans are for him, the two-way deal, and he said they're still working a lot of stuff out with everything that's been going on, but they want to certainly he's a big part of their future, he said. And
the reason why the two-way deal I think still is the leading option for him is because he doesn't have another, like he's not a free agent, and they have to already waive 2 guys to get to add another full-time guy. They have to waive a 3rd guy. And I think there are some obvious waiving candidates, like I'm blocking on the other name of the guy from Cleveland to
Lamar Stevens.
There you go. Khem Birch with the bad body.
Those are 2.
Maybe
those are 2 obvious waiving candidates. I think Stevens isn't even, like, his contract isn't even guaranteed until January, so that seems to be an obvious choice right there.
Right. And so to add either Sissoko or Barlow, you need to waive a 3rd guy. And Barlow seems more likely because you might have to match somebody. Like if somebody else offers him a deal on a full contract, like you kind of have to give him that to get him to stay. Whereas Sissoko you have his rights, and you can go ahead and sign him to a 2-way deal. I think that works out for everybody. But this is the minor issue that the listeners may or may not care about too much.
They care about everything.
They do. I should give them more credit. They care about it all.
Or less.
We will bid the folks adieu. Right now, I'm not sure we will be back. Wemby's taking a break. We might take a break. We're gonna commit, the 3 of us plus sports editor Nick Talbot, to I think if we can, a weekly deal once training camp gets started in late September. We want to spend more time with you every week. I think we're going to try to fit in a new room for Tom to broadcast from every week. He's done the bathroom. Maybe he can do it like a kitchenette, a breakfast nook.
The fitting room at Ross Dress for Less.
A fitting room at Ross Dress for Less. The listeners can send in suggestions for rooms where Tom can podcast from. That could be a fun thing.
How about an escape room? Like that could be part of the deal. He has to try to get out of the escape room while podcasting.
Those are extremely secure and top secret. So
maybe we could do a driving podcast, right, Mike? And I could drive, and you and Jeff could be
that is a podcast idea. That is for another time. Tom is one of the worst drivers in North America. Tom is not a good driver. But we will. I'm going to end this looking at the bright side. I survived several vehicle rides with Tom, with all my appendages, with my health. And we see the listeners next time. You all can do the same. And in the meantime, you can take care of each other and keep it real.